What's going on, everybody, and welcome into the live stream fantasy football channel. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoy draft content. We have a 12-team full PPR draft that we are just moments away from being able to get going here. I'll be drafting from the 1.7 draft position. I'm just making sure the final settings are right where they need to be. Let me know if you can see me. Let me know if you can hear me. Get a little bit of a reverb there, but I'll mute my stream. I just have it pulled up to make sure that everything is underway. If you guys that are watching now could hit the like button and throw a comment on there to let me know that everything is good settings-wise, and then once I get that confirmation, we'll kick it off with the draft. And as usual, I will post in the video description later on here the exact timestamp of the draft beginning, and if we do multiple drafts, do it that way as well. So appreciate you guys for jumping in. And excited to do another one here. I'll draft from the 1.7. I don't have any preconceived notion tonight of what kind of strategy I want to do. But we'll see what the draft board gives me, and we'll just kind of go from there. I think everything's probably ready to go. Still getting, just waiting a moment to see if we get any. There we go. Aiden let me know that we are good on the stream. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fantasy football content. But I'm going to kick it off here in just a matter of a moment. Make sure that we can get it all good on the audio side. And we'll go ahead and get started here. Getting things rolling with a 12-team PPR draft here on the Sleeper app. Excited to rock and roll from the 7th pick tonight. We'll see what draft strategy I decide to go with. The dad is on the clock with the first overall pick. We'll see if Jamar Chase ends up being the selection there. We've got a green dot next to dad. Hopefully dad's aware that we're starting things up, but I think if it auto-drafts Jamar Chase for him, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. He took some time with the decision. Ends up taking him. We go wide receiver. Bit of an unusual start as Aiden goes CeeDee Lamb. Oftentimes see him more toward the middle of the round. I was hoping to get a crack at CeeDee Lamb myself at the 1.7. That will not be the case, though. Justin Jefferson going off the board, number 3. And then we get our first running back of the night. Bijan Robinson goes 4th. And I'm sitting here 3 picks away, wondering who I may have access to. A couple of different directions that I could go with this one tonight. I took Christian McCaffrey yesterday in the draft that we did last night from the 5th pick. And it very well may be that McCaffrey shows up for me here at the 7th pick. But I could elect to go a different route. Ooh, Amon-Ra St. Brown ends up going off the board, which does give me access to one other running back prior to Christian McCaffrey, and that's Saquon Barkley. He was a stud last year, and you don't normally see him fall all the way to the 7th pick. I think I am going to go ahead and take the running back, even though from the spot in the draft that I am going, you don't always expect to be able to start that way with Saquon Barkley from the 7. I'm going to be satisfied to do it and get my first running back locked in. Whether it's a hero RB build will remain to be seen as we go along through the rest of our draft, but it's always nice getting one locked in. This is interesting. I think last year, if you were drafting in the first round, you saw a lot of what we saw at the top of this draft. Big name wide receivers going off the board early. In a full PPR format, makes a lot of sense. But then what did we see last year was those middle round running backs like a Joe Mixon and a James Conner, and on and on and on in that middle range. I'm sure I'll recognize more of the names as we go along here in this draft. Those guys all smashed. All those guys. David Montgomery was great. A lot of those guys in the middle. Aaron Jones. All those guys held up the entire season. From an injury perspective, they didn't have any, which was very unusual to see. And so does that impact the way that drafters will approach this year's draft? Do they have that in mind and say, man, I missed out because of a zero RB style on Joe Mixon last year or on those types of guys? Josh Jacobs was fantastic. I faded that style of drafting, and you can make the case that it cost me a bit. But what do we do in 2025 based on that information? Do we overreact to it? Do we stay put? It'll be interesting to see how strategies evolve. McCaffrey, Achane, that's a heck of a start. I knew Caleb was going to take Brock Bowers. I probably would have taken him if he hadn't. I'll take a moment here before evaluating more of the teams. I want to make sure I am looking at the board. A little early for me to go Trey McBride. I've got a few seconds left to decide. Josh Jacobs is one of those guys that I think he probably will get a gigantic workload this year. From a receiver perspective, I could maybe go with a Drake London. Yeah, let me take one. Man, I almost missed my pick. Yeah, I know. They're rushing me along here. 30 seconds isn't long, so be ready. I nearly wasn't. I'm going to take Drake London. He's not a guy that I take a ton of times in mocks, but I think in the middle of the second round, he is going to be a target hog for an offense that should throw the ball quite a bit. I know that Bijan Robinson is there as the workhorse running back, and he joins a team that adds Josh Jacobs to it here. So that's a great RB start. There's only going to be two. It's McCaffrey, Achane, Bijan, Jacobs are the two RB starts that we're getting this draft. And I think both of those are very compelling. I nearly went the Saquon Barkley Jacobs route, but I had to go back to my roots a little bit as a guy that loves drafting those wide receivers in full PPR early and often. I wanted to get one on the board to try and build a robust, really solid kind of core of wide receivers here. We're back through 2 rounds now, so at the turn, the dad goes Jamar Chase and then JSN on the way back before grabbing Kyren Williams, who I think is a great pick. There's some really interesting running backs, and it does begin to thin out, in my humble opinion. Let me know if you disagree. It does begin to thin out toward the end of the 3rd round, or really, it may thin out sooner in this particular draft, because I'm noticing now we saw Chase Brown go way early in the 2nd round. Achane goes, that's pretty typical, but Jacobs, Irving, Jonathan Taylor, and then Kyren, you've got maybe a couple left that people are super excited about, and then we'll see from there. So depending on what is available to me here in the middle of the 3rd round, I could end up going with a hero RB build. When I do that, there are usually some specifications that I would like to adhere to that it's unclear for the moment if I'll be able to access the players I need to do the hero RB in the way that I prefer to do it, but we'll see. Tyreek Hill goes off the board in the 3rd round. Jefferson, Bucky, Irving, Tyreek. That's a good little start. Bijan and Jacobs was the double hero RB, and they've added Garrett Wilson to that to get in on the wide receiver run. I am 2 picks away right now, so I'm surveying the board. Trey McBride is still there, so that's a tight end option for a couple of guys, and we'll see if he makes it all the way to me. If he does, I might have a consideration for him. Not going to bother with the Q for now, though. Only 1 quarterback off the board. There goes another one, Lamar Jackson. And so here, I know that I'm either going to get access to a tight end that I do think is going to have a really good year. I like Bowers quite a bit more, but this is about a round later. As T. Higgins goes to lead to my opportunity to make a decision here, I'm not going to go running back. If I regret it, then I regret it. But James Cook is just not somebody that I find myself drafting in the 3rd round. I'm looking at the 2 onesie positions. I'm taking either a quarterback or a tight end here, which is really something that I feel I need to be doing if I'm going with the hero RB build. And man, I'm really caught between. This time I'm going to take Trey McBride because I think middle of the 3rd is fair value. If he goes early 3rd, where I could still be accessing like a Kyren Williams, sometimes a JSN, in a different type of draft, maybe Chase Brown drops toward that region, or Jacobs, Irving, Taylor, all those guys getting pushed up just ever so slightly means that I'm going to, and I was going to take Jaden Daniels out of my queue. I'll be very interested to see what Caleb's team ends up looking like. You get Neighbors, he could be the receiver 1, Bowers, tight end 1, Jaden Daniels could be the top quarterback. I had strong consideration for Daniels, but I decided to go a little bit of a different route. But I am going to try to commit a little bit to this hero RB build for the most part. We'll see what happens, which just means I'm attacking other position groups here in the coming rounds 4 through 6. Generally speaking, I'm leading wide receiver in these rounds, which is why, as I've talked about in other draft videos, I am usually trying to leave the first couple of rounds with at least one running back to be my hero. If I want to do it a little bit in a little bit of a modified fashion, if I take a Malik Neighbors in the first round and I get a Brock Bowers in round 2 like Caleb did here, then maybe would I go like an Omarion Hampton in round 3, a James Cook, or even a Breece Hall if I can push that running back one to the 4th round. Yeah, but if I'm relying on Breece Hall to be my hero, it's just a little bit dicey. I'd rather him be my guy in like a 0. If he falls into the 5th round, then I'd happily take him there. Late 4th, I'll still take Breece Hall, and he'll probably go in the 4th. Travion Henderson is another name. I just don't know that I would end up drafting him in the 4th. There's no reason not to, though. And Lil Colt decides to really go heavy. Chase Brown, Omarion Hampton, Travion Henderson. So it's more running backs than I prefer to go in PPR, but he's going to have a great room as a result. Caleb's on the clock. I'm looking at the 4th round. Breece Hall's still sitting there. He could be my second if it's a double hero build. That's about the cutoff, though, for me to really be thinking running back before I get into kind of the dead zone range. He stacks Terry McLaurin with Jaden Daniels, a really compelling start. For Caleb, it's starting to turn into a 0 RB potential, though, there as well, which is fine. But that does seem to be what he's doing. All right, I'm looking for a wide receiver, too. I could go quarterback, but they're all off the board. The 4 that I would consider taking are off the board. So it is going to be receiver for me. We've got it sorted by ADP. We're going to reach a little bit. Don't miss her pick. Reach a little bit and take Teteroya McMillan. Teteroya McMillan, I believe is how you say that. Is it Teteroya? I'll try to get some confirmation on that. I know it's not Tet. He doesn't want to be called that. But I'm taking McMillan because Teteroya. I saw somebody say Teteroya. Well, somebody Teteroya. Or simply T-Mac. Let's just call him T-Mac so we can stop fussing over it. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching here on YouTube. I'm going to take a moment to look at some of the comments if there are any. Not a ton, which is fine. Hunter says he's locked into the live from the McDonald's drive-thru. Hashtag no days off. Appreciate that from Hunter. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you hit like on this stream if you are currently watching with us. Yeah, I go McMillan. I go T-Mac with my 4th round pick. I just think it was one of those cases where he wasn't going to make it to me in the 5th round. It seems like ADP says one thing. The draft actually does something else when it comes to Teteroya McMillan. And so I decided to jump on him. He's my wide receiver 2. I've got possibly the RB1 because I did draft one in the 1st round. And I've got maybe the second best tight end. My thing with Trey McBride, he's going to get tons of volume. And I do think he'll experience some regression when it comes to touchdown. Positive touchdown regression should be coming because he just gets such a target share. It's inevitable that Kyler's going to have to look over that offensive line and find him a little bit when they get into the red zone. And there's other wide receivers I like in this range. It was just a situation where I had been kind of going back and forth yesterday between some wide receivers, and I think I went with Devontae Smith. And he ends up going there at the 4.12. Before Xavier Worthy at the 5-1. That's a great little turn. And, I'm chasing that receiver room because that Chase, JSN, Smith, and Worthy start is really, really tough to go along with Kyren Williams. Yeah, it makes you feel like what's even the point when somebody handles the 1-1 in an effective way. I think that's a really nice piece of drafting there from the dad. But we'll continue to try to build up our team. I mean, Drake London, it's just always a challenge. And that's why you do probably grab your running back, right? When there's somebody that's got Chase as their wide receiver 1, well, you're not gonna have a receiver as good as his. Mine's Drake London. So I'm behind the 8 ball a little bit there. JSN, I would probably, say that's better than McMillan. So once again, I'm behind the 8 ball there. I've got Barkley over Kyren. But the value there could be in Kyren Williams. But only one drafter is going to have access to Jamar Chase. It's the guy going first. So that's just the way it is. We're up here in the 5th round, and we've got a bit of a decision on our hands. I like Zay Flowers. I like some different receivers in this round. I'm going to dream on something for a moment, though. I'm going to dream on the idea that Rashee Rice, who has fallen past ADP, ends up getting his way when it comes to a shorter suspension. And I trust that I can draft a very good room of depth here to understand that I'll be without Rice for a while during the season. But looking over there at Team 1, I've got to try to put together the best lineup that I can for weeks 15, 16, 17. And I think Rashee Rice is involved in that. So I'm going to deal with it during the season to basically be a spot short on my bench because when you talk about a suspension, that's not going to be available. That's not going to be eligible for an IR spot. But I am going to draft Rashee Rice over a couple of the other guys that I found interesting. In a sharp room like this, it can be very difficult drafting from the 1.7. I think I preferred it a lot better when I was drafting against computers, but when the draft is going, man, you can get stuck in the middle without really feeling too strong about your options when you're drafting from that 7th pick. But, hey, that's why we challenge ourselves to mock draft and to try to figure things out and be ready for whatever may come when the real thing shows up. Hit that like button if you'd be so kind here on YouTube, and subscribe for more fantasy football draft content for the rest of this month and into the season. We'll keep this YouTube channel populated during the year this time around. Almost up to 10 likes. I think we can get there. Appreciate you guys for jumping in. All right, we're wrapping up here. The 5th round has concluded. I like what Low Colt is doing. Took the 3 running backs, but Nico Collins, Jalen Waddle, and Rome Odunze to staff the receiving room there is pretty solid as well. I think that's going to be a solid room to go with those good running backs. Checking things out, I am a pick away once again. It just feels like you never really get a break when you're drafting from the middle, because you talk about it for a moment, and the next thing you know, you got to be thinking about the next pick. Some receivers that we like down there. Here's the thing that's interesting. Quarterbacks are still available too. And Olave goes right before me. Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes are there, and that's kind of the way I think it should be, because if you don't get one of the first 4 quarterbacks, I typically am going to push for rounds 4 and 5. And in this instance, I'm going to push through round 6 and not take one. I've got 10 seconds left. There's some running backs, but it's still kind of that range of the draft that I'm not crazy about. And I'm getting a flex that I really like in Zay Flowers. And more importantly, Zay Flowers is going to be my wide receiver 3 during the weeks that Rashee Rice is not available to me. So I think that's important to get a flex wide receiver that I really, really like. And getting Zay Flowers in the 6th round, I wasn't sure if he would get back to me when it came to the Rashee Rice pick, but I knew that Olave would, or Odunze would, or Flowers would, or Judy would. I felt like any of those 4 I probably could have taken there. Or I could have really gone the big-brained route and took Jordan Addison, thinking, okay, like, is this a way that this could make sense this year in fantasy football drafts? Jordan Addison suspended for the first 3 games. Rashee Rice is supposed to have his hearing or his mediation, whatever it's being labeled as, on September 30th after week 4. So if you drafted them both, you could play Addison you could play Rice for the first month, and then Addison's off suspension, and then you can kind of cycle it through. And during the suspension for Rashee Rice, Addison will be ready after Rice kind of got you through the Addison suspension. And then by the time the playoffs are here, baby, both of them should be locked and loaded. Fun with crime, I suppose. I don't know if that's a real strategy, but let me know if you would do it. I think it's interesting. Bo Nix off the board as the QB5. That is compelling. I mean, I've been talking about it for the last couple of nights that I'm just not into the QBs quite so early, but now it almost feels like it's to the point where somebody's getting a value, but we see a QB go, and it's not Joe Burrow. It's not Patrick Mahomes, which is interesting. The room is locked in tonight from Ren. Yeah, it really does seem to be. Addison goes to Aiden. Team 1 knew exactly what they were hoping would drop to them, and it's Burrow Montgomery at the turn. Which, again, I think Montgomery is a really interesting RB2. And so that's a nice little build going on there from Team 1. And they grabbed a quarterback to stack it with Chase. I am glad this is not a real league, because Team 1 is really putting together a nice roster. I mean, when you only spend 2 of those first 7 picks on running back, and you don't draft one until round 3, and then you take one in the 7th, you're pushing the position. But to have Kyron and Montgomery feels like a good, stable floor, and there's a lot of ceiling to the receiving core, and you took Burrow, who is stacked with your top pick. So that is very, very interesting. Caleb says it's been interesting as well. He's got Connor as that lone RB so far. Everyone has been super dialed, probably the closest thing to my home league. That's what we got from, going to mute the sound for a second, because sometimes it glitches out like that. before my pick, I'm going to refresh. Hopefully we get it locked and loaded back real quick. Loading. I would hate to miss a pick, but Sleeper was having a glitch. All right, we're back. Ish. All right, there we go. Yeah, it does seem to be a dialed-in room tonight, which is, again, it's something I talked about. I started a Brenden Schaeffer fantasy TikTok as well, because I put one TikTok video on my regular TikTok, and it was not, didn't get any views because I TikTok normally about other topics. And so I said, screw it. I'm not going to waste my time with putting fantasy stuff on my other main channel. Started a new one, and it's getting a few views, so you can check that out. B. Schaeff Fantasy Football on TikTok. I'm up here. Igbuka is gone. Golden's gone. I got to realize, man, and look, I wouldn't change it. I would draft Zay Flowers over both those guys. It's just kind of interesting that, you know, you're not going to have access to some of these young rookie receivers unless you are doing what feels like a reach on them. I've got 4. Man. Judkins is kind of intriguing. Let's take Khalil Shakir. We're going to draft a bench receiver, which, again, isn't a bench receiver. Because whenever Rashee Rice is suspended, I need Khalil Shakir to be Josh Allen's number 1. And I think he will be, but that we know that volume is going to be spread out. We know that volume is going to be spread out. So Doyle says he had Montgomery and Igbuka in the queue, and it was back-to-back right in front of him, and he scrambled for Aaron Jones. That's a strategy thing. My strategy during a draft when it comes to how to handle the queue, I don't want to start queuing players too far ahead of my pick. Because, like, for instance, for the 8th round right now, if I start doing a queue and I've got 8 picks left or whatever, I'll get to where it's like, crap, I started building this queue, and there's really only 6 guys that I like, and there's 8 picks. And then inevitably, those 6 will be gone. You've spent the entire time waiting. Instead of searching for options, you're going, I hope it's fine, and it's like razor thin, and let's say the whole board is gone, your whole queue disappears, and now you've got 30 seconds to pick. That is a nightmare. That is a living nightmare. So I usually wait. I wait it out, and then I say, all right, there's 4 picks left. There's 3 picks left. I do have 4 guys, and I'll start putting together a queue. Or sometimes I won't, but I'll have it in my head, and I say, positionally, what am I looking to do? All right, so right now, I could take another running back, so I'll start looking at those. I don't want to queue anybody on stream because y'all will see what I'm doing. So that's a reason that I haven't done it, but maybe this time I will. And if I get burned, hopefully Caleb's not watching. It'll be fine. Caleb says, this was not the room to go early tight end or quarterback, I'm afraid. Yeah, because when you go early, you're hoping people chase you at those positions. And it took a while for people to start chasing QBs. It's happening now. Austin going Kyler is crazy. Not because it's a bad pick, but because, man, yesterday, I think it was round 10, he was still available. I'm thinking, all right, I'll take McBride. If I can stack with Kyler, that's just fine. But now people are starting to catch up and say, I got to draft a quarterback. I'm going to try to avoid doing that. All right, I've got 3 picks before me. Higgins goes. I've got 5 receivers. I only need 6. I don't need a tight end. So I can start looking at some running backs here. And Warren goes. He was the guy that I was clicking for Q. I've got Tracy, maybe Charbonnet, ETN. And now it's me. I'm up next. And so we're going to cue this guy because he's going to be our pick. Caleb is not going to pick Patrick Mahomes, but I'm going to. Tracy's a great pick. If Mahomes weren't on the board, I would have taken him. This is the point at which I am super, super good with taking Patrick Mahomes. And by the way, I've got his number 1 pass catching option. Normally, I am looking at the top 4 quarterbacks, Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, and I'm out on quarterback until round 10. This time, the draft has unfolded, and I realized, that's right. I've got Rashee Rice. Yeah, we're going to take Patrick Mahomes, and we're going to enjoy that stack. I feel very, very good about that. I think Mahomes is in for a huge year for fantasy. It's just very difficult to allocate resources in a draft unless it is a 6-point passing touchdown league. And even if it is, they get on the goal line, they're going to give it to Pacheco. They're going to let Kelsey throw it to Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, they're going to pull out all sorts of crap that is not useful to you when it comes to Patrick Mahomes and his fantasy output. But They're pushing the ball down the field in practice, in camp. Mahomes is dialed. He doesn't like the way that it ended last year. I think Patrick Mahomes is a great pick in fantasy, but it's all in context. I'm not taking him in the 4th or the 5th or the 6th round. I just can't imagine doing it. But in round 8, when I've got Rashee Rice, yeah, I'm making that pick. That's the kind of pick that really is just going to make my draft sing. It's going to make my team look a certain way that I feel a lot better about. Because I'll be honest with you, when I'm looking at Team 1 going, man, he beat me at wide receiver. I gotta really nail it. And I went Rice and Zay Flowers to make me feel a little bit better. I think I can go toe-to-toe with anybody's receiver room other than maybe Team 1. You know, we got a Lamb, Hunter, Addison, Igbuka room. There's a lot of upside in that room. We got a Amon-Ra, McConkey, Higgins, J-Mo with Matthew Golden as well. That's a great room. But I feel like I can really go toe-to-toe, especially once we get on the other side of whatever happens with Rashee Rice. And Shakir, that's a pick that I probably, well, Igbuka was gone. Golden was gone. Yeah, you look at the receivers that went after Shakir. And I'm always looking for rookies if I can find them, but I'm also looking for upside young players. And Shakir just signed a contract. I know that Josh Allen's going to spread the ball around too much, but for a bench flex, really, I think Shakir's a fine pick. Because if it does click in for him off the new contract, then he ends up being a really, really quality contributor for fantasy. But the receivers that went after me, Jacoby Myers, Diggs, maybe Pearsall, I could have made a case for him. But Kupp, you're talking about guys that are older or guys that I just don't see a lot of upside with. Myers is a safe floor, but is he really going to be upside in an offense that has Brock Bowers, Ashton Genty, and is the Raiders? So they're not scoring like the Bills will when it comes to touchdowns. Those are all considerations for me. Those are all factors that I'm looking at. Is it me? Am I up? Not quite. I'm one short. Okay, Brenden, lock in. There's nothing you need other than another running back. So let's look at running backs. Actually, let's look at receivers. Because what if there's a name that's just going to sing to me? Yeah, if I hadn't gone Shakir, I'd be looking Keon Coleman this next round. Colston Loveland goes off the board. Godwin, Jaden Reed, Brandon Ayuk. I already have a Bill. Shaheed's a nice pick. There's Marvin Mims I kind of like, but I really should be looking running back here. And the RB2 that I think I took him yesterday for my bench, but he's going to be in my lineup here week 1. I'm going Charbonnet. And you might go, man, there's other guys there's guys that are going to get more volume than Charbonnet. Maybe. But I like Charbonnet to maintain value for a whole year. Ken Walker plays such a rugged style that he might be a little bit more of an injury risk. He's already kind of banged up. Then other RB1s, you could say that Ken Walker is, going to miss a couple of games here and there. And Charbonnet has proven to be a plug and play for fantasy when that's the case. So what I'm looking to do is put Charbonnet in there week 1. Hope that he gets, 38% of the snaps, and hope that he catches 2 passes for 14 yards and runs for 35 yards, and I get 7 points, and he's not going to kill me. Because during those weeks, I'll be evaluating some of the running backs that I am ready to draft from my bench. But Charbonnet week 1, and you could even go another step further. I won't do this, but you could look and say, what's the schedule? Is Seattle a tough running matchup for game 1 or not? And approach it that way for a guy who's like a good week 1 matchup. Aiden wanted to know what the team's looking like. It's looking good. I'll get into it. I'm going to grade everybody's team when we leave here. Caleb Williams goes, yeah, I'll give out grades when we leave here. Cam Scattaboo, he keeps dropping. It's almost as though he never should have been drafted in a single-digit round to begin with. If I'm wrong about him, it'll be with conviction. I will not have any Cam Scattaboo. We've got our 2 running backs. We've got our, 1 bench wide receiver. We're going to leave with 6 wide receivers, and then we're going to have to slam running back toward the end. And there's running backs that I like. They're starting to go. I mean, Trey Benson's getting up there into the middle rounds. And again, I have to decide, do I like Trey Benson or Charbonnet more? Because they're going to end up going in about the same round. They did here. Both 9th round picks. Is there a running back that I'm just really worried is going to leave the board before my next pick? Not necessarily. It's still the same guys at the top. And like there would, I guess, come a point where Scatterboo becomes a smart pick. But Stevenson's going to lose ground to Travion Henderson as the year goes. Javonte could lose ground to rookies in Dallas as the year goes. Just give me my dude. Just give me Luther Burden. Well, I loved watching Luther Burden last night. Bears, Bills, Luther Burden, 3 for 49. Also run blocking. I mean, if he's my 6th wide receiver, I can get away with it because Luther Burden's going to potentially be brought along slowly. I think Ben Johnson's going to fall in love with him, but I also think you've got DJ Moore, you've got Adunze, you've got Loveland. Cole Kmet caught a nice pass last night with the first team. There's a lot going on with the Bears. I feel like I'm even missing a guy. Adunze, DJ Moore. Did I say DJ Moore? They've got a lot of dudes. Luther's going to play, and I think he's going to be fantasy relevant, but you're not going to want to start him in week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. You're going to want to wait a little bit and have the luxury to do so, but I'm going to be glad I have him on a team if I do. And if I don't, it's because I already have him in Dynasty in a couple spots, and so I can live with that. But Luther's my 6th wide receiver. Marvin Mims goes off the board right after my Burden pick, and that was the other receiver that I liked in that range. If I don't get one of those two guys, I'm probably pushing wide receiver 6 down until some of these guys that are later rookies, like the Torrey Hortons and the Jalen Royals and just the guys that I can take, Isaac Tesla, guys that I can take a flyer on with the last pick. And if I don't get him with the last pick, it means somebody else reached up to take him, and that's fine. BK says, I almost picked Burden for no reason except to annoy Schaeff. And that, my friends, is the problem with doing fantasy football live streams with people that you're going to be in leagues with. But in general, it's fine because everybody says they were picking Luther Burden, so I guess I wasn't alone in that. It's okay if people snipe me. It's going to be part of the game, and I feel like doing content is something that I'd like to do. So understanding that I'll get sniped from time to time, as long as you hit the subscribe button, I'm cool with it. I think we have a lot of fun with these mock drafts, so I appreciate it. Official Jay is asking about his squad. That was one. I mean, McCaffrey, A-Chain, I was excited to see how that went. Hurts was one of the top 4 QBs that you got. Wide receivers maybe looking a little old for my taste, but there's a lot of potential power there. I'll rank everybody. I'm not going to rank them, but I'll give general grades and thoughts on the teams when we wrap here. That'll be how we end this end the stream. I could maybe do another draft because it's not that late, but I'm going to try to get some sleep tonight. I feel like I've been just sitting doing content stuff all day because I have been. There goes Scatterboo. And at that point, it's probably a reasonable pick. He's still a rookie running back. So for Aiden, that was probably good value. 2 picks to go, and I'm back on the board. I've got 2 running backs, and one of them is really a backup. So I need to start considering how to stock my bench with upside plays at the RB position. And try to take advantage of whatever may come. Find a way to stock up on RB2 candidates. Because, I mean, RB1, we got Saquon. And by the way, I'm not going to be drafting Will Shipley, but in a real league, I might be tempted to do so, especially going hero RB. It's like you've only got one running back that you took. Do you want to risk not having the backup when you think he's a really good player? And I think Shipley is. Krosky Merritt goes right before me. I thought about it. I thought about it potentially with this pick. I was going to have to scroll down to find him, though. But that's okay. I got to be real. I'm not up to date on the latest with Jaden Blue. What's his injury? He's trending toward playing. All right, so he's probably fine. That's who I want here. Like, rather than look at the running backs at the top of ADP, Ramondre Stevenson, he's going to lose ground to a rookie as the year goes. Najee Harris, going to lose ground to a rookie as the year goes, if he even plays, because he's got one eye. Nick Chubb, old, multiple injuries. I'm not drafting Nick Chubb, right? I'm going to draft a guy who's 22 years old instead of 29, not coming off of multiple big-time knee injuries or whatever the lower body stuff is for Chubb. In the same range, I'm going to draft a rookie, Jaden Blue, who, like, maybe he stinks. But there's also a pretty good degree of possibility that Nick Chubb doesn't stink, but that he's just cooked because of age, because of injury. And so I'll take Jaden Blue, believing that he's a flyer on a potential RB2. If he's third on the depth chart and it stays that way for a month, well, then I drop him because I'm not going to use him over Charbonnet or Saquon. But there is a pretty good chance that maybe not a good chance, but a decent chance that I happen into a player that is more productive for my daily lineup or my weekly lineup than Zach Charbonnet. And that's the idea behind it. Any of the guys that went after, I mean, Ray Davis, that's applicable to him. Braylon Allen, that's applicable to him. Not rookies, but second-year players that are young, upside, talented. We haven't seen their best. I'd rather draft a guy to my bench where we haven't seen his best yet in the NFL. At least you hope, right? With Nick Chubb, we know we've seen his best, and you're looking for a renaissance. I just am not sure. Look, with Ramondre Stevenson, maybe he just continues to do what he always does, and he's solid, right? He doesn't, let's say he doesn't fumble a bunch and lose the role, and he keeps a role. Okay, but there's a cap to what that's going to be because you're going to be fighting it upstream against Travion Henderson, a rookie that's his arrow's pointing the other direction. That's how I draft bench. Ramondre Stevenson, I might take him if I've only got one running back to this point. I've stocked up on all kinds of other crazy stuff, and I have to start him as an RB2, but I have my RB2 covered. I don't need him. What I do need, though, is another bench bat. Woody Marks, he's a consideration. Algier, that's more handcuff. I drafted CMC yesterday, but today I'm going to draft his handcuff, Garendo. Garendo's banged up. He may not be ready for week 1. I don't need him to be in this build. I've already decided Charbonnet is going to start for me. Running back's a little bit leaner than I want it to be. And would I go Jaden Blue over Ray Davis or, Bashal Tutin is another guy that I was kind of hoping would make it back to me. But, we've got a sharp room here tonight, which is fine. Don't invite Austin to your leagues, man. He's going to snipe your running back. Just kidding. Low Colt says spamming RBs in rounds 2 through 4 worked better than I thought. Yeah, it can. I mean, I wouldn't have done it in round 4, but then again, you got both of the hyped rookie running backs at the same time, and you ended up with Braylon Allen and Dylan Sampson, who I love from your bench. I mean, I like your running backs more than mine for sure, because I went with one superstar, and I think Chase Brown is going to be 90% of what Saquon does, or maybe even better than him. That's just great allocation of your resources. And then you've got 2 running backs that could end up being super studs that are rookies. It'll take some time, though, so you got to work through the early weeks potentially. But then when we look at, obviously, Trey McBride, I'm going to take my tight end over his. Caleb versus Mahomes could go either way, but I'd prefer Mahomes. But I like Caleb as a later round target, and that's when you drafted him. The receivers, Collins, Waddle, Odunze, Pearsall, Higgins, is a really, really good receiver room for not really prioritizing the position after round 1. Is it better than London, McMillan, Rice, Flowers, Shakir, Burden? I wouldn't say it's better, but all it has to do is really be about equal, and you can make up for it because you're certainly better at RB2 and RB3 than I am. So, I mean, that's a good team. I like Low Colt's team. We're close here to the end. I am likely to just go with one more running back. It's going to be a younger player. And in this one, I'd really like to go reach a little bit deeper and say if it's anybody that's not going to get a role, we can know it quick and drop him. Like you could go with the Algier and say, oh, he's going to be a handcuff, but then you are literally just waiting for Bijan to be injured. Although Algier could be in that same tier as Charbonnet, but I almost don't want to give myself an out. I want to say I've committed to Charbonnet, and I don't really want to have to choose weekly between Algier and Charbonnet, because inevitably I'll get that shit wrong. I just will. So give me Woody Marks. Again, just going with a running back that's a rookie that if he's 5th on the depth chart, I might give it a couple weeks. But if he gets an opportunity early and becomes the next, Krosky Merritt, where everybody's now really hip to what he could bring, then I'll be glad I drafted him. But if he's not going to have a role, I can certainly drop him for the hot waiver claim after the first couple of weeks. And that's the idea behind it. So we'll let the 5 picks here go off the board, and then we will go ahead and grade everybody's draft. If you're in here watching for the first time, appreciate it. We've got more live viewers than we often have, so I appreciate that. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, if you'd be so kind. We've been doing basically nightly mocks here. It says we've got 32 viewers. That's awesome. 13 likes. I think we can get more than that, so appreciate you guys for doing so. I'm going to read some comments from YouTube here, and then I'll get into grading the draft. Phil said, sorry I missed the beginning of the chat. Is this hero RB designated draft or just the way the draft came to you? Yeah, Phil, I think at a certain point, I decided it was going to be hero because I didn't go with, like, Jacobs in round 2 was a consideration. And when I didn't take him, I'll move myself actually off screen completely here. Let me find a way to do that. Just because I want to be able to show the board a little bit more clearly. So, yeah, once I didn't go with a running back like Jacobs in round 2, I said it's basically going to be hero because I was taking either a quarterback or a tight end round 3. I'm usually spamming receivers in the middle rounds in a 12-team format. And so, yeah, it just ended up being hero at a certain point. And like Saquon, Aiden mentioned it, is a gift at 7. You could do worse with a hero build than that. Saquon or Aston Genty for a keeper league. Jay, it depends on exactly what the keeper specifications are. If it's a case where you know that you will end up keeping certain guy for a round 1 pick or whatever the case, like I wonder how Aston Genty is even a keeper because he's a rookie. But it depends on like what pick you are obviously making, sacrificing to have that keeper, I guess is the way that I would phrase it. All right, let's go ahead and jump into looking over the draft and seeing whose teams we like the best. All right, team 1, I've already spoken pretty highly about. When you go Chase, JSN, Smith, Worthy, you've got 3 wide receivers and a flex in PPR. That's all I'm looking to do is really get a 4-pack. And they did that. They did it while having a pretty solid RB1, at least in terms of volume. Montgomery is the same thing. TD volume, if there's regression there, that could hurt you. But Trey Benson, Shipley, and Eckler's not a pick that I think you needed to make because of having the safety of Montgomery. But if Montgomery is suddenly playing 20% of snaps and it's all about Jahmyr Gibbs, then Eckler is actually a really savvy play, especially if Brian Robinson gets traded. Burrow is a great pick where you drafted him. Well, I shouldn't say great pick. He's a very good pick, though. He's probably the right pick because you have Jamar Chase. And I do think that is a powerful stack. And you took Pitts late. That's an A draft. I think you nailed it. And it's a playoff team and maybe the league winner from the 1-1. Team 2, Lamb, Hunter, Addison, Igbuka, Downs. I look at the receivers first. And I listed Downs because you may not know about Igbuka week 1. But if Igbuka goes, 5 for 110 and 2, we're going to be going. And same thing with Travis Hunter. Like, you got questions at receiver for sure week 1 because Addison's not going to play. You needed a 6th receiver, Aiden, because of the suspension to Addison. But otherwise, I like the names you did draft. I like Tyler Warren. I don't love your running backs on your bench, but Scattaboo, I like I said, acceptable pick where you took him. Taylor, Ken Walker, fine starting 2, and Allen is a good quarterback. So it's like a B draft with a chance to blow everybody away if Hunter and Igbuka hit like you're hoping they do as rookies. Certainly a possibility to make the playoffs, so I like the players. Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Sutton, Tillman, Douglas. Not enough power at receiver for me from Team 3 here. Bucky Irving, Kamara, Jones, Brian Robinson. It just feels like RB for the sake of RB, and I don't think it's quite a match with PPR. Like I don't know about the Brian Robinson pick. There's other teams that maybe could have used Brian Robinson in round 8 or 9, but I don't think yours needed it, Doyle. And so that's going to knock down a little bit. But it's a solid team, but it's more of a C draft for me. Not sure if it's a playoff team. Bijan and Jacobs, one of our 2 double hero builds. To back that up, you went Garrett Wilson, DK Metcalf, George Pickens. And then it's Jennings, Bateman, Kyle Williams, Josh Palmer. I mean, you took a ton of receivers. Not for as many as you took, though, I feel like it's a lot of bench fodder. Guys that you're not really going to be confident to plug in, and guys that aren't necessarily going to rise above their station. Bateman and Josh Palmer kind of know what they are. I would have taken more Kyle Williams types around Kyle Williams, more rookies, more youth with my late receiver picks, because I think you've just given yourself lineup headaches with that flex is all that you've done there. I like the running backs, though, and like ETN was a value. Caleb Johnson, you could afford to pick him because you took those 3 receivers up there. I'm going C+, I think, with that team. You push quarterback, and you could certainly have afforded to. C+, but man, if those 2 running backs are getting 25 touches a week, it's going to be way better than a C+. So, like, playoff capable for Team 4. Team 5, we're going A.J. Brown, DJ Moore, Debo, Darnell Mooney, Kirk, Besh. I like the Kirk pick because I'm not sure if Mooney is going to be healthy, if Debo is going to be reliable. And so that's a case where I think it's okay to have Kirk on your bench. And Besh is a rookie, so that's the archetype I'm looking for there. Running back, I love Gibbs, of course. Chuba Hubbard, Mixon, Javonte, Chubb. I just don't like the running back picks, and I don't think you've got a lot. And again, last year I didn't like those same picks, and pretty much all of them would have hit because they were old guys that, just never did get hurt. And so even though I don't really like the roster as much because of that, I was wrong about this last year. So it's more of a C to C plus for me. But again, it's just for how kind of meh I am about the back end of your receiving core, I should like the running backs more than I do in order to give it a more favorable grade. And so that's the reason it's more of a C draft for me. Amon-Ra, McConkey, Higgins, J-Mo, Golden, Mims, and then Tesla. Really good wide receiving core. I like that draft. You pushed running back, but you were able to get Breece Hall with your first one. And again, we think of him as yucky right now for whatever reason in the fantasy community. If Breece Hall ends up smashing, this is going to be a really solid team. And you stacked Amon-Ra with Goff, so it made sense of who you drafted at quarterback. I like the Loveland pick at tight end. I like that you didn't take a second one. You're just going to see it from Loveland week 1. And if at some point it doesn't work out, that could be dragging you down a little bit. But you could drop Roschon Johnson. You could drop Tesla. You could drop Krosky Merritt if it doesn't pan out for those players and pick up a tight end while you wait for Loveland if you have to. Swift as an RB2 is underwhelming to me, but this is a really solid team. B- and maybe more of a just standard B. I don't really have anything negative to say about that draft. It's a good team. Let's identify my own team. London, Teteroa McMillan, Flowers, Shakir, Burden. And then I get Rashee Rice. I might have 3 wide receiver ones on this team, so I really like that. But you know what? I think so does the dad. They've got 3, maybe 4 wide receiver ones. But I've got Saquon, who's going to have to be better than Kyron Williams if my team's going to beat that team. I also need Trey McBride to outpace Kyle Pitts by a lot because I spent a 3rd-round pick on him. Would I like my team better with maybe another stud receiver in round 3? Who could or Jaden Daniels in round 3? Not really, because I love the Mahomes pick where I got him. Like Omarion Hampton, Travion Henderson might have been the play there, or Marvin Harrison. Yeah, in round 3 to really feel like I loaded up because Kyle Pitts is a player that these late tight ends. Hell, Kelsey was going late. I think you can push tight end. Doing this draft, I don't mind having McBride. And I did say he'll get touchdown regression positively. I don't know if I'm convinced that he was the right pick. I think if I'm gonna go that route, it's probably Jaden Daniels next time. But again, getting Mahomes as late as I did, this will never happen in a real thing. So I think I was justified there. Running back 2 is really the only weakness of this roster. I love my receivers. I think I've got the second best receiving core in the league. I got the second best tight end. I've got a top 5 running back. I've got a quarterback who is well worth what I paid for him. I need Charbonnet, Jaden Blue, Garendo, or Woody Marks to turn into an RB2. But that's kind of the way I like to play it, because if those receivers that I have pan out from my bench, I will be able to trade for an RB2. I will trade Charbonnet with Shakir if he pops, or Luther Burden if he pops, or Flowers, Charbonnet and Flowers for, by week 5, I will have been able to avoid all the people who spent up for running backs and then they got injured in the first month. And then the guys that are still left standing, I'll be able to potentially identify a running back and trade them, if not 2 for 1, 2 for 2, where I'm improving at running back and taking a hit at receiver. So I like my team. Grade, I'll give it a B+. It's actually probably a B. It's a B+ for what I want to do. Most people would go, Brenden, your second running back is Charbonnet. Give yourself a little bit of give yourself some grief there, because that's not okay. It is for me in the way that I like to play, though. I do not mind it one bit. So that's why I would say B+ in what I tried to do. But I'm looking at the receivers going, there's some names that aren't on this team that usually are if I'm drafting this many receivers in the middle. So I need to understand that, when there's sharp drafters, you're gonna have to be ready to play. All right, 5 teams left to talk about. Let's finish this up and go home. Neighbors, McLaurin, Olave, Myers, Godwin. I just don't know about Godwin. If I'm wrong on, it's another guy that I just go, if I'm wrong on him, then I am, and other people will enjoy it, but I'm not tempted to draft him. It's tough to go early quarterback and early tight end, but if you're going to do it, these are the two that I'd want to do it with, Bowers and Daniels. It's a 0 RB build, and I hate James Conner. I love James Conner. I'm not drafting any of him. Tracy, I think, was a really solid pick. Dobbins, Spears, Algier. Yeah, I think you forced yourself, Caleb, into some RB stuff that I'm not fond of, and I should like your receivers better for the build. If you had taken Rice from me instead of going Conner, or actually, I'm sorry, you were drafting after me that round. Like, if you go Waddle instead of Conner, I feel better about your team because I'm just not sure. But you had to go Conner because you really pushed running back. But it's you got players I really like, so I can't ignore it. I mean, wide receiver 1, tight end, and quarterback is a studly room right there. I'll give it a B. That's going to be fringe playoff. McCaffrey, Achane. I'm excited to look at this team. Adams, Judy, Diggs, Coleman, Ayuk, Hollywood. I just think that the receivers are a little bit old, and there's a lot of risk in like Diggs and Adams and Ayuk, who we know is out for 6 weeks, on the same team. But it could pan out because the running backs are really good. Although Achane's currently hurt, McCaffrey tends to get hurt. But I like what you did with Ray Davis on the bench. Ayuk is somebody you can put in an IR spot. So that's the one thing that actually makes sense about a guy like Ayuk. And you could do this with Isaiah Likely if he's going to be out. Use your IR slot to your advantage. I think that's a fine draft. I'll give it a B. I just would have gone different receivers to really make it sing. I think there was an opportunity that was missed there a little bit for the way I like to draft. This is a really good team. Nico Collins, Waddle, Odunze, Pearsall, Higgins, Slayton. I don't know about Slayton, but I like the receivers before that. Caleb and Evan Ingram, you drafted a quarterback tight end combo late that I think is going to be more than serviceable, and I love the running backs. B+ for me, playoff team from Lil Colt. BK Langston goes with Henry, Cook. Well, let's go receivers first, like I normally do. Puka Nacua, Evans, Cooper Kupp, Jaden Reed, Harris, Pat Bryant, Torrey Horton. Feels like there should be an L in there somewhere, and there's not. Evans and Kupp is a lot of old to be relying upon. And Henry. And Puka, not because of age, but because of the Stafford stuff. There's a lot of risk here. This is a very boom-bust team. Cook, I think, is solid. RJ Harvey, I mean, if you're relying upon him to play early for you, there could be risk in that if he's down the depth chart. Tony Pollard. This is a tough one. I'll go C+, but I also think there's a room for it to have been. I mean, we could be really talking about it as a great draft. And I just am not 100% sure. That's the most polarizing draft for me, because if you get some good injury luck to bounce your way, it is going to be a really tough team to beat. But I just think there's too much risk there. Wrapping it up with Austin's draft, he goes Brian Thomas, Marvin Harrison, Ridley, Shaheed, Leggett, and is that Alec Aomanor? I believe so. Genti, Pacheco, Judkins, Mason, Tootin. That's a really interesting room for what you spent. And a couple of NFC Wests at the onesie positions with Kyler and Kittle. It's a good team. High B, maybe even a B+ team. Probably a playoff team. Which I said that about maybe 5 teams, and so there's some room there. That's a top half draft, though, from Austin. I had fun with this one. This was a very interesting room. I think it was our toughest room yet, my opinion. What do you guys think? Toughest room yet? Really, really competitive draft, and I think it's the kind of thing that gets you ready for your league. I think that's going to wrap, though, here. It's just after 11 p.m. Central Time as we are recording this live stream, and so I think I'm going to call it for the night. If you'd be so kind, hit the like button before you get out of here, and join us. We're going to continue to do as many of these as we can as draft season continues to march on. I'll take a look at any of the comments here. Keaton wants me to do from the 1.8 draft spot. Keaton, hit subscribe to the channel, my brother, and I will work to do 1.8 maybe with the next mock that I do. I've done it, I think, before, but it might not have been with a full room. It is a different beast when you've got a full draft room like this. Willie says, love the quarterback wide receiver stack. It's always great if you can do it. Aiden says that Team 6, though, forced the Goff stack. Don't like taking him there when Dak went undrafted. Yeah, but, I think that I don't know if Dak is better than Goff. You know, I imagine Goff scored more points last year. I think the point, though, is, and I'll try to highlight Team 6 here that we're talking about. I think the point is that if you're going to spend a round 8 pick on a quarterback when all the value that exists there, like an undrafted Goff, or excuse me, an undrafted Dak Prescott exists later, Goff is not really an upside play because he doesn't run the ball. But in the same round, I took Mahomes. So look, I think there's some merit to the Goff pick, especially to stack with Amon-Ra. That is fun when you have that elite pass catcher stacked with a quarterback who throws a ton. And I think it's even better if you're talking about a 6-point pass TD league. Willie says he wants to draft against me one-on-one. Yeah, we can do some best ball. Hey, Willie, I mean, first of all, at bschaeffer12, I just put that into the chat on YouTube. Send me a direct message on Twitter or TikTok or wherever you want to let me know that you want to join a league, because I may have some space available in some leagues still. Otherwise, we can do some stuff on Underdog if you want to do some drafts over there, or DK, some head-to-heads. I play a lot of best ball as well. I would love to do some best ball content. I just couldn't get YouTube ever to have people care about the best ball content when I do it. I don't know why. But I'm going to continue to try to build this channel, build up TikTok and other things like that. Totally understand what you mean, Aiden. Don't think that Dak is better necessarily, but rather have an undrafted Dak than Goff in round 8. Because in round 8, if you're not spending it on a quarterback, which again, I did the same thing. You could have gone, Mark Andrews, ETN, Tyler Warren, Trey Benson. There's other guys that are available there. But that's kind of where it kind of dies off a little bit in terms of extreme value to the draft. So I can understand saying, you know what? These 10 names that went before he took Colson Loveland, he just didn't care about those names. Because I don't care about 70% of those names. So it's reasonable to say, look, if you're on the clock, rather than draft Brian Robinson because he was top of ADP, you can go, I know I'm stacking Goff. It's exactly what I did with Mahomes. Because I was looking at that going, I don't know, am I going to take ETN? I don't know that any of these guys are going to be difference makers for my team, but I know Mahomes will. So that's the process there for my thoughts on it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure you hit subscribe and like the channel. Like the stream on the way out before you go, because that'll help us with the old algo. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time on the B Shafe Fantasy channel. Peace.